Hey everybody, RHINO here, the world's strongest pro bodybuilder and inventor of the cooler, the world's only cooler that holds a gallon of ice water and keeps your pre and post workout drinks all together inside one ice cold container. Be sure to check out Efferding.com for my new line of t-shirts, including the RHINO Raw shirt and this new design, Stupid Strong. Over the years, when we talk about someone who's just insanely strong, we used to call it retard strength. But now that we have the PC police and everyone getting butthurt and needing a safe space to hug it out, I just stuck with Stupid Strong. I'm going to share my thoughts on growth hormone use today, so if discussing performance-enhancing drugs offends you in any way, this would be a good time to change the channel. You just can't tune into any sports, because now that the Russian ping pong team was outed for using performance-enhancing drugs, there's really no clean sport left. Of course, there's always Mike O'Hearn's channel, though. At least he's still natty. Now, if you do decide to hang around, I'd love to have you along for the ride. But if the extent of your knowledge on growth hormone comes from after-school specials, or if you still believe Lyle Alzado's brain tumor was caused by steroids, then you may want to refrain from commenting. Back in the late 80s, I had the opportunity to train with a popular up-and-coming Canadian bodybuilder by the name of Mike Harris, who was nicknamed Baby Hulk. Now, he was a massive dude, like 6'2" and over 300 pounds, as I recall. He was training at a gym in Seattle, in the basement of a building downtown, so I called and asked him if I could come up and train and have a candid conversation about performance-enhancing drugs. And he said no problem and invited me up. Now, Mike was a super cool guy. It's been my experience that bodybuilders have always been generous to share information with other competitors about things that have worked for them, including diet and training methods, but also performance-enhancing drugs. And with all the misinformation and downright lies that are constantly being circulated by the media and legislators with an agenda, there just wasn't very much solid research, regarding safety and efficacy at the time. Bodybuilders have long been the guinea pigs upon which athletes have relied on for information. Call it bro science if you will. Admittedly imperfect, but it was the only science available. Now, I was particularly interested in growth hormone at the time because it was so new to the industry and so little was known about how effective it was. It was being touted as the next evolution of performance-enhancing drugs that were supposed to be better than steroids, and I had the opportunity to get some, but it was outrageously expensive, and I didn't know if it was worth the money. I was working as a maintenance man for $10 an hour, and the idea of spending $5,000 on growth hormone would be a huge undertaking. I even took on a second job on the weekends so I could save for it. Now, this wasn't uncommon, and it still isn't. Bodybuilders will spend every penny they have on food and performance-enhancing drugs to try and reach their goal. There's even an old joke about it. What do you call a bodybuilder without a girlfriend? Homeless. Now, I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's not unique to bodybuilders. Most athletes I've trained over the last 25 years who are trying to become professionals commit so much time and resources towards achieving their goals that the majority of them are broke. Now, this includes most Olympic hopefuls, professional MMA fighters, boxers, just about all athletes. Hell, I remember a backstory about a guy who was on TV saying he was homeless and living in his car while training every day to become the next American Ninja Warrior. It's the rule, not the exception. You may remember the survey where they asked athletes if they could take a pill that would guarantee them an Olympic gold medal, but they would die 5 years later. Would they take it? Now, over half of them said they would. And that number's probably much higher in many other countries, such as Russia, China, and many Eastern Bloc countries. That's the mentality, by no means exclusive to bodybuilders. So I went to Seattle and I trained with Mike, and then we sat down to talk afterwards. I asked him what he knew about growth hormone, and Mike said something to me that was so profound, and I didn't even realize it at the time. He said, if you can't grow on a little test and D-ball, you're probably not going to grow. Now, fast forward 30 years, and I can't say it any better today. Step away from the specifics for a second, and forget that he said test and D-ball, and focus on the bigger picture, with respect to performance-enhancing drugs in general. First and foremost, all things being equal, they're never equal. If you're a natural athlete competing against a natural athlete, the playing field is not level, and it never will be. Genetics reigns supreme. Some athletes naturally have more testosterone than others. Some have more muscle. Some have a better ratio of fast twitch to slow twitch fibers for their respective sports. Some respond better to training, and so on and so on. While an enhanced athlete does have a significant advantage over a natural athlete, when you compare two athletes who are both using performance-enhancing drugs, the same disparity exists. The playing field is not level. Once again, genetics reigns supreme. In addition to the disparities I mentioned between natural athletes, there's also a big difference in the way individuals respond to performance-enhancing drugs. Some people just respond better than others, and they'll grow faster and keep growing longer. Now, all too often you hear people say, if I took what he's taking, or as much as he's taking, I'd blah, blah, blah. Now, if that were true, everybody would be Ronnie Coleman. Everybody would be squatting 1,000 pounds. But we know that's not the case. As a matter of fact, there's more guys taking performance-enhancing drugs at gyms all across the country that one would never suspect of doing so. Not everyone responds the same. Not everyone eats as much or trains as hard for as long as some others, nor do they all have the same interest in doing so. I've known many, many athletes over the years taking dosages that would make your head spin who never got close to becoming a pro or having an elite total. And I've known many athletes that take less than an amateur bikini girl who either have elite totals or an IFBB pro card. So there I was, actually a bit relieved that Mike didn't think GH was worth the money, when all of a sudden, as we're nearing the end of the conversation, Mike drops this bomb. He says, you know, there was one good thing about GH. I think it made my dick bigger. Huh? Damn it. There goes $5,000. Fuck muscles. I never saw Mike after that day. I went back to Oregon, and he later moved to Las Vegas. And as way leads on to way, I now have my own experience to share with you about growth hormone, which probably won't clear up much confusion. As a young bodybuilder in my early 20s, I used GH in the off season without testosterone, and it'll probably come as no surprise that I didn't gain any muscle. First rule for effective GH use: you'd better be on testosterone, and you'd better be in a calorie surplus if you expect to gain any appreciable muscle. This begs the question, was it the testosterone or the GH that caused the muscle growth? Certainly the testosterone's the primary driver, but there can be a synergistic effect to adding compounds. I said in a previous rant with respect to optimizing eating, sleeping, training, and supplementation that 1 + 1 = 5. The more disciplines you improve, the greater the results. The same seems to apply when combining some performance-enhancing drugs, and GH may very well provide an additional benefit for some users over and above the use of testosterone by itself. Adding HGH to an off-season growth cycle at 4 to 6 IUs per day in 2 divided doses appears to be an effective way to add mass, but it doesn't happen in 30 days. HGH is most effective for mass when used for much longer periods of time, such as 4 to 6 months or more. Using less for longer periods of time is more effective than using more for shorter periods of time. Now, when dieting for competition, I felt as though low-dose HGH usage in the range of just 2 IUs a day would provide that extra level of definition, particularly in the midsection. But you already have to be pretty lean and use it as a finishing tool. If you think it'll take you from 20% body fat to 8% body fat, you're sadly mistaken. Now, one caveat to pre-contest use is that most bodybuilders are also running at least half a dozen different cutters, such as Tren, Winstrol, Clenbuterol, thyroid, anti-aromatase, and others. So it's difficult to tell what benefit, if any, HGH really has. With respect to powerlifting, I never felt as though GH use contributed anything to strength. The scientific literature seems to support this conclusion as well. Ronnie Coleman alluded to the same some time ago. He said he didn't see a significant strength gain from HGH, and he was already deadlifting close to 800 pounds prior to his 8-time Mr. Olympia run. It may, however, help with recovery, particularly for the joints, which is crucial for powerlifters. Once again, it's difficult to know because anadrol can increase IGF-1 for some lifters as much or more than HGH, and it's the IGF-1 that actually stimulates the systemic growth and repair. This is where I feel HGH had the greatest benefit for me. Although I never gained a significant amount of muscle in a short period of time at any point throughout my career, whether taking GH or not, I do feel as though it played a role in helping my muscles and joints recover from workouts. I say this most specifically because of my experience using IGF-1 injections in my knees. I could do an entire rant just on knees, but as an aside, let me say that I've done everything over the years to battle tendinitis from heavy squatting. Prolotherapy, waste of time. Platelet-rich plasma, or PRP, waste of time. Glucosamine and chondroitin, waste of time. Even Kobe Bryant's trip overseas for stem cell injections proved to be a waste of time. IGF-1 injections into the knees, however, has both scientific and clinical support for its efficacy. Some of you may recall Tiger Woods' doctor, who was one of the pioneers of PRP in Canada, was caught bringing HGH into the US. Well, that's because PRP doesn't work without HGH or IGF-1. Another effective use of HGH is as a bridge between cycles. HGH can help retain muscle during post-cycle therapy when your system is recovering from testosterone suppression. Thus far, it seems as though I'm offering glowing support for HGH use, but it's no panacea. In addition to being uncertain how significant the effects are over and above testosterone alone, there are downsides as well. As a bodybuilder, you do have to be careful not to dirty bulk while using HGH, because it will blow out your belly, which is presumed to be from intestinal and internal organ growth. GH will cause water retention, both subcutaneously and in the joints, which commonly leads to symptoms similar to carpal tunnel in the hands. There's also the likelihood that you could experience acromegaly, or gigantism, as seen in Andre the Giant. Soft tissue growth can occur in the hands, the feet, the nose and ears, as well as the lower jaw and brow. As bad as these side effects are for men, they're exponentially worse for women. GH has become very common amongst women, even at the amateur level, along with Anavar, clenbuterol, and antiestrogens. In women, the drawbacks of HGH are even more pronounced. The distension and thickening of the belly and torso seems to be very difficult to reverse, and it will absolutely destroy a female competitor's physique. Even worse is the soft tissue growth, enlargement of their nose and chin. It's permanent, and it can be emotionally devastating. Now, of course, these effects are all dose dependent, but for women, I think the risks far outweigh the benefits. Now, lastly, let's talk about HGH for longevity purposes. Does it help you live longer or improve your quality of life when you're in your 40s, 50s, and 60s? The research that spawned the myth of using HGH for longevity is a very poor study from 1990 with no control group, no double-blind method, and no comparison to a placebo group that simply exercises. This study did show that elderly patients increased lean body mass and decreased body fat while on HGH therapy. And this is important because studies show that older men with greater lean body mass realize a significant decrease in all-cause mortality. But was the HGH therapy ideal or even necessary at all? Probably not. Subsequent studies with similar populations demonstrated that HGH is no more effective for improving body composition than exercise alone. This is true of so many drugs being prescribed for people. Take metformin, for instance. Studies show that exercise alone is twice as effective as taking metformin for decreasing hemoglobin A1C. Simply adding cinnamon to your diet is equally as effective as metformin. So why take the drugs and expose yourself to the side effects when a drug-free alternative is either equally or even more effective? This leads me to the biggest reason I believe HGH is a bad risk for longevity in particular, and the reason I haven't used HGH in many years, and that's diabetes. HGH is known to cause insulin resistance, and the last thing you want when you're in your 40s, 50s, and above is to increase your blood sugars and potentially become a type 2 diabetic. After all, the main reason men in their 40s, 50s, and 60s go to a hormone replacement clinic is just to feel and look better. Growth hormone will not do that for you. As a matter of fact, growth hormone will make you feel like shit. It makes you tired as hell. And not just a little tired, but like chronic fatigue tired. both as a result of the water retention and the insulin resistance, causing every carb meal to put you straight to sleep. Now, trying to convince someone otherwise is purely profit-driven, and I think you're actually doing that customer a huge disservice. And there's not a shred of research to suggest that HGH does anything for longevity, that exercise wouldn't do much better without any side effects. Here's the real takeaway. I know from having spoken to dozens of different HRT doctors and clinic owners over the years that the number one problem when trying to help someone with hormone replacement therapy is compliance with the program. Most people simply don't stay with the program. They think they can come in and get some steroids and growth hormone and their bodies will magically change without any effort on their part. They may realize a slight increase in lean body mass as they institute an exercise program and a healthy diet along with a drug protocol. But as the discipline fades and the workouts decrease in frequency, the results stop and they get discouraged and quit. According to clinic owners, the vast majority of patients don't last more than 3 or 4 months on the program. Now, this should sound familiar. It's the same problem with any effort to change almost any behavior, any effort to create new habits. It's the same in the world of dieting, same in the world of exercise, same in the world of addiction, whether it be alcohol, cigarettes, or recreational drugs. Compliance is the most important factor for success, and the vast majority of people simply don't comply. And this is why the vast majority of people don't succeed. So whether you decide to use performance-enhancing drugs for competition or for hormone replacement therapy to improve your general sense of well-being, neither one is a panacea. Both will require the same commitment and discipline to all the other aspects involved in any successful outcome: consistency, discipline, and hard work. Well, if you've managed to listen this far, it's probably because you're still wondering if I'm going to answer the question you really wanted to know about when you clicked on this rant to begin with. Does HGH make your dick bigger? Well, let me put it this way. Well, that's my rant, and as always, thanks for listening.